I've been through multiple downturns in the market, I want to share with you some of the top ways of financing your deals creatively. We're right now entering a market where it's very different than what we've seen before. And so the properties that are left on the market, or the people that are trying to trade properties during this time, are people that may be a little bit more motivated than maybe they were a year ago. That leaves us with this whole new way of buying real estate. Welcome to the Canadian Real Estate Channel. I'm the Godfather, Alfonso Quadra, and these are lessons from the Godfather. I've been having a blast doing all of these sessions, and what I want to talk about today is financing, not just financing, but creative financing in this new market. We're right now entering a market where it's very different than what we've seen before. Interest rates are going up, and some of the purchase prices and some of the market values are staying kind of where they're not moving too much. And so, specifically multifamily, because I'm a multifamily investor, don't expect for prices to come down too much. For example, you probably heard on the news, there's like the housing correction and how some of the housing prices are going to go down. That makes a lot of sense because there's only so much house that someone can afford if interest rates are continuing to go up. And so when you hear that there's a correction in the housing market, they're not talking necessarily about the multifamily or the commercial market, where it operates based on the performance. Because income is income, the expenses are the expenses, and the performance of that property is the performance of that property. What does that mean? The value comes from the net operating income. Now, there is the interest rates that if you need more income to service more debt, well, it's normal that you'll see cap rates going up. And so that means that the prices will soften, but not always, right? Because the sellers do not have to sell, right? That's the beautiful thing about multifamily. It doesn't matter where the market is. The worst time to sell a piece of real estate is when you have to. And the objective of investing into multifamily is that you get into a position where you never have to sell. And so the properties that are left on the market, or the people that are trying to trade properties during this time, are people that may be a little bit more motivated than maybe they were a year ago. And so that leaves us with this whole new way of buying real estate. And because I've been through multiple downturns in the market, I want to share with you some of the top ways of financing your deals creatively. Okay, so number one, this is where I go first, is the seller. Instead of going to the bank and paying 6-7% interest rate, why not have the seller finance you? Okay, so we're going to go to a vendor take-back mortgage. So a vendor take-back mortgage is a type of mortgage when the seller supports the buyer. So the seller lends funds to the buyer in order to buy that real estate, in order to transact. Most of the time it represents a second mortgage, but sometimes it can be a first mortgage. So the key to the vendor take back is that the seller needs to have the available equity in the property in order to lend you. That's the only way they can do it. So instead of you going to the bank to be financed for this property, you're going to go to the seller. Now the question that a lot of people have is, why in the world would a seller finance you to buy that deal? Well, first of all, they get to sell the deal. in a market like this where interest rates are going up, that deal may sit on the market for a very long time unless there's a price reduction. So not only does he get to sell the deal, but he gets to sell it at the price that he's looking for, he or she is looking for. Also, the majority of the time, they bought that property for less. Also, throughout that property, chances are that the accountant actually depreciated the asset. It's an income strategy that a lot of accountants do. And so when they sell that property for more, there's going to be a significant capital gains that they'll have to pay. So by doing a vendor take back, that seller gets to defer some of the capital gains. And so there's a massive benefit to the seller on working with you, the buyer, connecting buyers and sellers. The sellers now have to come and help you, support you to buy that property from them at the price that they want, so they get the benefits that they're looking for. How do you know that a seller is prepared to do this? Well, this is where you have to do a proper discovery call. You got to connect with the sellers, and you got to find out exactly why they're selling, what do they want to do with the capital, and have they even heard of such strategies. You're probably watching this video, taking a lot of notes right now. You're going to go and talk to a realtor, and the very first thing out of your mouth is going to say, is the seller willing to do a vendor take back? It's too early in the game. That's what a lot of people do. They watch videos, they figure out what seller financing is, and I don't want you to go out there looking for real estate just to do seller financing. This is another tool that I'm going to add to your tool belt that you can pull out as needed. The biggest mistake that investors make is introduce the vendor take back too early in the game. You have to wait and see, do a proper discovery to see if this is even a strategy that the seller may want to apply. So that vendor take back is key. Now, the first place that I go for financing is going to be the seller. Or if the seller is not available, I may want to do a second mortgage, right? So instead of having the seller help me out with funding for the deal, I may want to go to another place, get a second mortgage on the property. Here's another one, an agreement for sale. You've heard it in many different ways. Agreement for sale, delayed closing, lease option, master lease. This is you getting the deal, getting your purchase price accepted today, figuring out all the details, but you're closing at some point in the future. Maybe the deal needs to, maybe you need to improve the deal. Maybe you need to add value, increase income, reduce expenses. You now have the opportunity to do that before you close. It's called an agreement for sale, or a delayed closing, or a lease option, or a master lease. You've heard it. You've heard all of these terms. Basically, what it means that you are taking control of the property today, and you're transacting at some point in the future. So by the time you get to the close, the property is actually going to be worth more than what you've put the deal under contract for. And so this is perfect for where we are in the market today, because maybe the interest rates and where the income is, you can't find a way to pay that seller their purchase price unless you do an agreement for sale. The next one is assuming a mortgage. For the past 2 years, people have been getting really great mortgages, right? For example, if you got a mortgage at the end of 2020, let's say you got a 5 or 10 year mortgage, commercial mortgage, you might have been paying 1.5 to 2%. And so these mortgages they exist. And when we talk about the differences between residential and commercial mortgages, well, if you break a commercial mortgage, you have to pay the entire interest up front, generally speaking. And so the penalty is huge. You have to pay all of the interest that the lender was going to expect as a penalty. So sellers don't want to do that. Also, if the mortgage is at 2%, you know, that's an asset. So it's easier to get a mortgage that already exists than try to get a whole new mortgage. So assuming a mortgage can be powerful, right? Most properties have mortgages that exist. They're paying 2 or 3%. Instead of breaking that mortgage, you assume the mortgage, you assume all the terms, you assume the interest rate. We're just working on a deal right now. 1.74, 40-year AM for the next 7 years. 1.74. In this day and age, impossible unless you assume a mortgage that already exists. So assumable mortgage, this can be extremely powerful. Now the problem is usually there's a gap between the funding and the purchase price. Well, now the seller can come in and help you on that with some seller financing to help you bridge the gap. So assuming a mortgage is going to be that you're going to see that more and more moving forward. And then here's the last one. Think outside the box. Don't get stuck in a box. You have a problem. Every time you see the real estate and you see someone selling a piece of real estate, that is a problem for you to solve. You want to get lots of deals done, you got to become a professional problem solver. And so for me, I'm a professional problem solver, and I want to make sure that everybody wins. And if you're creative enough and you can think outside the box, you can figure out how to do amazing deals, especially in the next year or two, where creative financing is going to be a part of the investment toolkit. And for me, I love teaching this to you guys. And if there's any subjects that you want to hear about, you want to learn about, hey, why don't you put them in a comment? Put it in the comment. We're going to do a video on it. I'm here to stay. Canadian Real Estate Channel is here to stay. We're here to bring you value. We're here to bring you education. We're here to bring you the latest news on real estate investing in Canada. Alfonso loves you, and we'll see you all at the top.